We'll shut down the federal Department of Education and we will move everything back to the states.
Department of Education, tilting the scales to four-year college degrees over choices that people might have otherwise made that are better choices for them. Vocational training, 1-year, 2-year programs. Using it as a cudgel, and this relates to the latter issue you asked about, to tell local schools they don't get that money unless they're adopting what I certainly view as toxic racial and gender ideology-based agendas.
What life would be like without the Department of Education. First of all, did you know that the DOE ensures consistent education standards across the U.S.? So without it, states would vary in education quality more than they already do, worsening disparities for marginalized and underfunded communities. The department also enforces federal laws prohibiting discrimination based on race, gender, disability, or language in schools. So without it, protections for the most vulnerable groups, including students with disabilities, would weaken or just not exist. Millions of students rely on programs like Pell Grants for College and school lunch initiatives for reduced price and free lunch. Eliminating the DOE would limit access to these resources and deepen the opportunity gap for low-income families. Federal financial aid programs help millions afford higher education, boosting workforce development. Without the DOE, fewer students could afford to attend college or trade schools.
The Department of Education is responsible for a lot of funding for higher education and K-12 education. Actually, about 75% of the department is focused on higher education through the form of financial aids, Pell Grants, support for college and university students. The rest of the House is focused on elementary and secondary education through Title I funding and the Office of Special Education.
But the lion's share of money coming from the Department of Education has nothing to do with K through 12 public schools. It goes instead for college educations.
Governor Stitt announced Friday that he wants to prepare every student for success in the workforce. He has some ideas to make this happen, like requiring students to graduate from Oklahoma high school. Stitt also wants students to have to be accepted into a college. If not college, he says kids should be accepted into a career tech. Otherwise, Stitt says a student would have to be going into the Army.
If you want to graduate high school in Oklahoma, the only way that you can qualify to graduate is if you, 1, get accepted into a university, 2, if you can't get accepted into a university or can't afford to go to a university, you have to get into a trade school or a technical college. And if you don't want to do that or cannot do that either, compulsory military enlistment. Ask me if there are any exceptions for students with special needs in this program currently. No, there are not. Want your kid to get into a university so they can qualify for graduation? Oh, but you can't afford it? Too bad. There's no FAFSA anymore. There's no Pell Grants anymore. There are no opportunities for your child to be afforded some kind of financial assistance now that the Department of Education is gone. You have a kid that's bright, hardworking, smart, well-deserved of a college education and can't afford it, that's too bad. Their next option is trade school or technical school.
Do you understand in part why the Department of Education was created? One of its main missions is equal access to education, something that did not exist at the state level until the passage of federal laws such as Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Without federal oversight, particularly if any of these laws that I just mentioned are abolished along with the Department of Education, there is no guarantee that students with disabilities, students from low-income areas, students of various backgrounds that require different needs from the standard education will receive those services. The state will also have now total control on how resources will be distributed, which will most likely benefit the most wealthy of students.
So what if Republicans eliminate the Department of Education? Schools existed before 1980. What did we all do before the Department of Education was established? I'll tell you what happened. Your pawpaw dropped out of school in the 6th grade because he had untreated, undiagnosed ADHD and was given no resources or supports or accommodations for his dyslexia and never learned how to read. And your mama, despite being a straight A student, was forced to quit high school at 16 because she got pregnant and her parents and the principal wouldn't let her return. The reality of most of our students before 1980, before the Department of Education was established, was that they had no rights within the public school system. If we survived before the Department of Education, we really didn't. Kids starved because they didn't have lunch money. Before the federal government forced states to take care of their disabled children, kids with physical disabilities and nonverbal autism were stuck in storage rooms converted into classrooms and forgotten about all day. Before the federal government started forcing schools to do the right thing by way of the Department of Education, immigrant children and English language learners were thrown to the wolves and left to their own devices and not given any special services to accommodate. This is where we're going to feel it hurt the most once they close down the DOE. We're going to lose Title I funding for schools in low-income areas. Students that need special education services are pretty much going to lose protection and guarantee that they are going to get the funding and services that they need. And kids that need Title IX protections and civil rights protections that the Department of Education are currently providing will no longer receive those protections. Louisville High School outside of Dallas just announced they're going to be closing 5 elementary schools to save money, to get them out of a hole for 2 fiscal years. Out of those schools, how many do you think are Title I? 3.
Is that this has been the same story for a number of North Texas schools as well. So despite impassioned pleas from parents, the Louisville School Board voted to close all 5 schools, and those include Owen, Creekside, Garden Ridge, Highland Village, and Polster's STEM Academy.
But in Texas, many blame politics. Last year, Ramsar's district saw a 40% jump in resignations and retirements after new conservative school board members pushed to remove hundreds of books and restrict lessons about race and LGBTQ identities.
The Board of Education just officially approved adding lessons from the Bible to the school curriculum.
Lessons from the Bible can now be taught in Texas public schools.
Today we fulfill our promise to bring drastic reform to our educational system. This bill mandates the display of the 10 Commandments in every classroom in public, elementary, secondary, and post-education schools in the state of Louisiana.
Oklahoma is facing new challenges to a mandate for public schools that would require them to teach the Bible in grades 5 through 12.
The Bible is a necessary historical document, which is that every teacher, every classroom in the state will have a Bible in the classroom and will be teaching from the Bible in the classroom.
Bill 514 from Representative Kevin Stratton. That bill would allow local school districts to decide whether to allow unlicensed chaplains in Utah schools. A number of school districts there are using this as an opportunity to get rid of salaried school counselors and psychologists in favor of these unlicensed volunteer chaplains.
The Louisiana school system, already ranked 47th in the U.S., is about to get even worse. As with many things in Louisiana, it's mostly the fault of the state's Republican Party. The state Senate recently approved one of Governor Jeff Landry's signature policies, passing a bill that would allow public funds to be spent on private schools.
Did you know that there is a school county in America that is currently segregating their schools? You heard me right, segregating by race and class. This county is in Louisville, Kentucky. It is the Jefferson County Public School System.
And I'm going to ask a man who's a great man, actually, one of the great men of our country, Kenneth Copeland, to come up and say a prayer. Do you mind? Kenneth Copeland.
I copied his suit. There are things in this great state of Pennsylvania.
Who do you think you are today? The more we learn about this covenant of God. Don't ever do it. Don't ever feel sorry for yourself. Don't ever do it! Absolutely stunning. Delicious. So, who was the biggest loser? Satan? No. God.
Right now, we release the presence of the Lord in the Senate chamber. We release the hovering glory of God.
Y'all wanted to play the fuck around game so goddamn badly. Well, you are fixing to find out very bigly.